Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today, we're unraveling a story that's so shocking, it's almost unbelievable. We're diving into the life and crimes of Christopher Dunch, a once respected neurosurgeon who turned into a real-life Dr. Death. This is a story of betrayal, of shattered trust, and of lives irrevocably damaged. So, grab your seatbelts because this is going to be an emotional and perplexing ride. Christopher Dunch was a paradox, a living contradiction that baffled everyone who thought they knew him. On one hand, he was the epitome of success in the medical field. A prodigy, some would say. He didn't just pass through medical school, he dominated it, graduating at the top of his class. His brilliance didn't go unnoticed. And soon enough, he was offered a prestigious position at the Dallas Medical Center. To the outside world, he was a man who had it all, a thriving career, respect among his peers, and a life that many would envy. But behind the closed doors of his private life, a darker narrative was unfolding, one that would shock even those closest to him. Dunch was not just a neurosurgeon, he was also an addict. Cocaine, opioids, alcohol, you name it, he indulged in it. It wasn't just recreational, it was a dependency, a secret life he went to great lengths to hide. The question that haunts us all is, how could someone so intelligent, so gifted, make such devastating choices? Was it the pressure of his job, the weight of the lives he held in his hands every day? Or was it something deeper, a flaw in his character that allowed him to compartmentalize his life so completely that he could be two people at once? As we delve deeper into this story, we'll explore the psyche of a man who was both a healer and a destroyer. We'll hear from colleagues who admired him, from patients who trusted him, and from investigators who were horrified by what they found. So, how did Christopher Dunch go from being a rising star in the medical field to a man whose actions would leave a trail of victims in his wake? Stick around as we unravel this perplexing tale of a man who was both a savior and a menace, a genius and a fool, a life giver and a life taker. Imagine lying on an operating table, the bright lights above you, the anesthesia taking effect. You close your eyes, trusting that when you wake up, your life will be better, your pain alleviated. But for 31 individuals who found themselves under the knife of Christopher Dunch, that trust was not just broken, it was shattered into a million pieces. These were not just statistics, they were mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, people who had families, dreams, and lives that were irrevocably altered. One such victim was Mary, a 45-year-old mother of two. She went in for a simple spinal surgery, hoping to finally get relief from her chronic back pain. She woke up paralyzed from the waist down. The devastation didn't end there. Her family had to watch as she struggled with her new reality, a life confined to a wheelchair. Then there's Jack, a 30-year-old athlete who had a promising career ahead of him. A minor car accident led him to Dunch's operating room for what was supposed to be a routine procedure. He woke up to find that he could no longer walk without assistance. His dreams of athletic stardom dashed in an instant. But perhaps the most chilling are the stories of those who never woke up at all. 2 patients died due to complications arising from their surgeries. Their families left grappling with a void that can never be filled. These victims didn't just suffer physically. The emotional and psychological toll is immeasurable. Many have been plunged into depression, their faith in the medical system forever shaken. They've had to fight not just for their health, but for justice, navigating a complex legal maze as they seek accountability for the horrors inflicted upon them. As we go further into this story, we'll hear directly from these victims and their families. We'll delve into their legal battles, their emotional struggles, and their undying quest for justice. Because this isn't just a story about one man's downfall, it's a story about the lives he ruined along the way. Picture this: Dr. Robert Henderson, a seasoned spinal surgeon with decades of experience, walks into the operating room. He's been called in to correct surgeries performed by Christopher Dunch, and he's expecting to see complications, maybe a slipped disc here or a misplaced screw there. But what he finds leaves him not just shocked, but deeply disturbed. As he opens up the first patient, he's met with a surgical disaster zone. Nerves are severed, vertebrae are shattered, and there's an inexplicable amount of bleeding. It's as if someone took a sledgehammer to the patient's spine. Henderson is horrified. These aren't just mistakes, they're atrocities. It's as if the person who performed the surgery had no understanding of human anatomy, or worse, had a complete understanding but chose to ignore it. The second patient is no different. Critical nerves are cut, and the spinal column is destabilized to the point where the patient could have been paralyzed, or worse, could have died. It's a scene of medical carnage that haunts Henderson, making him question how any doctor could do this. Could it really be incompetence, or is there something darker at play? This is the moment the alarm bells start ringing loudly in the medical community. Henderson takes immediate action, reporting his findings and setting off a chain of events that would lead to investigations, arrests, and eventually a life sentence for Dunch. But for Henderson, the emotional toll is heavy. He's left grappling with the reality that he's part of a profession where someone could cause such harm under the guise of healing. As we delve deeper into this story, we'll explore how Dr. Henderson's shocking discovery led to a full-blown investigation, shaking the very foundations of the medical community's trust. We'll also look at how this moment was a catalyst for the victims, giving them a glimmer of hope that justice might finally be served. Imagine a room filled with medical records, X-rays, and surgical reports, all laid out like pieces of a grotesque puzzle. This is the nerve center of the investigation into Christopher Dunch, a place where medical experts and law enforcement officers are working tirelessly to connect the dots. The atmosphere is thick with a mix of determination and disbelief. How could one man cause so much suffering? As investigators pore over Dunch's surgical records, they find a pattern that's impossible to ignore. It's not just one or two botched surgeries, it's dozens. Each case is a horror story of its own. Spinal fusions gone wrong, misplaced screws causing nerve damage, and even fatal hemorrhages. It's a chilling realization. This isn't a case of a surgeon having a bad day. This is systematic, deliberate harm. But gathering evidence in medical malpractice cases is notoriously difficult. Doctors are often protected by layers of bureaucracy and legal safeguards. Investigators know they need irrefutable proof to bring Dunch down. So they turn to his colleagues, nurses, and anesthesiologists who were present during the surgeries. One by one, people start coming forward, their testimonies painting a picture of a man who seemed to revel in his own failures, almost as if he enjoyed the chaos he left in his wake. The breakthrough comes when they find emails Dunch had sent, where he refers to himself as a cold-blooded killer. It's a shocking piece of evidence, one that turns the tide of the investigation. Law enforcement agencies now have what they need to make an arrest. But for the investigators, it's a bittersweet victory. They've solved the puzzle, but the picture it reveals is one of unimaginable suffering and betrayal. As we continue to unravel this complex story, we'll look at how this investigation not only led to Dunch's arrest but also sparked a nationwide conversation about the oversight of medical professionals. Because the question lingers, how many more doctor deaths are out there, hiding behind a medical degree? Picture this. It's a cold morning in 2015, and Christopher Dunch is sipping his coffee, perhaps contemplating his next move. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and law enforcement officers swarm in. The moment has come. Dunch is arrested, his face a mask of disbelief and perhaps, for the first time, fear. The news of his arrest sends shockwaves through the medical community and brings a grim satisfaction to his victims and their families. Finally, they think justice will be served. Fast forward to 2017. We're in a courtroom packed to the brim. The tension is palpable. You could cut it with a scalpel. Dunch, now in an orange jumpsuit, looks almost unrecognizable. Gone is the confident surgeon. In his place is a man facing the reality of his actions. On one side of the courtroom are the prosecutors, armed with damning evidence and heartbreaking testimonies. On the other side is Dunch's defense team, scrambling to paint him as a flawed but well-intentioned doctor who made mistakes. As the trial unfolds, each testimony is more harrowing than the last. Former patients, now confined to wheelchairs or living with chronic pain, take the stand. Their voices tremble, but their resolve is unbreakable. They recount their nightmares, their lost dreams, and their new, painful realities. The jury listens, visibly moved. Even the judge seems to struggle with maintaining her composure. Then comes the moment everyone has been waiting for, the verdict. The room falls silent as the judge reads out the charges. 4 counts of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury and 1 count of injury to an elderly individual. And then, the sentence, life imprisonment. A collective gasp fills the room. Dunch's face crumples. For his victims, it's a moment of vindication, but also a grim reminder of the life-altering harm he's caused. This wasn't just any trial, it was a landmark case. For the first time in American history, a surgeon would go to prison for actions taken during surgery. The message was clear. The medical community is not above the law, and gross negligence would not go unpunished. As we move forward, we'll delve into the aftermath of this groundbreaking trial and the ripple effects it had on medical oversight and legislation. Because while Dunch may be behind bars, the questions his case raised are far from answered. In the wake of the courtroom drama, a heavy silence settles over the community. For the victims and their families, the life sentence handed to Christopher Dunch is a bittersweet victory. There's relief, yes, but also the haunting realization that their lives will never be the same. The scars, both physical and emotional, are permanent. Parents, spouses, and children hug each other a little tighter, their eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Gratitude that justice has been served, but sorrow for the irreversible damage done. But as the dust settles, a glaring question emerges: how did we get here? How did a system designed to heal become a platform for such devastating harm? The medical community is forced to look inward, to question the very foundations of its practice. Hospital boards convene emergency meetings, medical licenses are scrutinized, and the spotlight turns to the oversight committee. The atmosphere is tense, charged with a sense of urgency and shame. Experts and activists join the conversation, pointing out the gaping holes in the medical oversight system. They argue that Dunch is not an isolated case but a symptom of a much larger problem. The lack of stringent background checks, the reluctance to report incompetent colleagues, and the absence of a centralized database for malpractice, all these systemic failures come under scrutiny. It's a wake-up call. And it reverberates through hospitals, medical schools, and policy-making chambers. New protocols are discussed. Legislation is proposed. The medical community is on the verge of a reckoning, one that could redefine the way healthcare is administered in the country. But for the victims, these changes come too late. They're left navigating a world that has shifted on its axis, a world where trust in the medical profession is forever shaken. As they attend physical therapy sessions or sit through endless medical consultations, they can't help but wonder, could this have been prevented? And the unsettling answer is, yes, it could have. So as we grapple with the aftermath of this harrowing case, we must also confront the uncomfortable truths it has unearthed. Because while Christopher Dunch may be an extreme example, the system that allowed him to thrive is very much intact. And until that system is fixed, the question remains, who will be the next Dr. Death? As we near the end of this unsettling narrative, we're left grappling with a host of unanswered questions that continue to haunt us. Was Christopher Dunch truly aware of the devastation he was causing? Did he lie awake at night, tormented by the faces of his victims? Or did he sleep soundly, indifferent to their suffering? The line between gross incompetence and malevolent intent is a thin one, and in Dunch's case, it's almost indiscernible. Psychologists and criminologists have weighed in, dissecting his behavior, his interactions, and even his writings in an attempt to understand the man behind the scalpel. Was he a sociopath, devoid of empathy, manipulating the system for his own gain? Or was he just a deeply flawed individual, so caught up in his own delusions of grandeur that he couldn't see the wreckage he was leaving in his wake? These questions are not just academic exercises. They're crucial to understanding how to prevent another tragedy like this. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, about the masks we wear, and about the monsters that sometimes lurk behind them. And as we ponder these questions, we must also remember the victims, for whom answers may bring little solace but are a crucial part of their journey towards healing. And so, we come to the end of this harrowing tale, a story that has shaken us to our core and forced us to question the very institutions we hold dear. The story of Christopher Dunch serves as a grim reminder, a cautionary tale that has reverberated through the hallways of hospitals and the homes of families across the nation. Thank you for joining me on this deep, emotional dive into a case that has exposed the dark corners of medical malpractice and systemic failure. As we go about our lives, let's carry the lessons we've learned here today. Always do your due diligence, question everything, and most importantly, stay safe. Because the world is full of uncertainties, and the only way to navigate it is to arm ourselves with knowledge and vigilance. Until next time, take care.